morning, Malcolm Nance.
There is nothing good about this morning.
Yeah, right? Good God.
God almighty, I can't keep up
Yeah.
with the mayhem.
I know. Just when you're thinking, oh, this is what is he going to do to distract from the Ivanka Trump thing? Right now, we have the Saudi Arabian thing and him ordering the Justice Department to prosecute his, political enemies. In the meantime, we're desperately trying to figure out like what Matt Whitaker is telling him, right, to obstruct Bob Mueller.
Right.
What you pick a most most important story, Malcolm?
Oh, so the most important story? Well, I really think we have to start off with Khashoggi first, because that story is so incredibly dangerous to every person who goes overseas. Donald Trump has given permission for foreign governments to kidnap, dissect, and eliminate through melting in acid the bodies of U.S. residents and by extension, U.S. citizens. And he accepted their excuse that he was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood and an enemy of the state, which means that he has validated their ability and their desire to murder all of their enemies, which means green light for every country in this world that wants to, one, roll up and arrest CIA officers, because they could use the same excuse that they're enemies of their state. And, we have assets in the intelligence community who are not U.S. citizens, but who are U.S. residents. That is just a green light now. Donald Trump has given the world permission to do that. And also, you can do anything you want to them, up to boiling their bodies away in acid.
Malcolm, explain in light of that why this story about Russia, which has tried to manipulate Interpol, is poised to lead it, according to the New York Times.
They're saying he failed.
He failed. Okay, he
Yeah,
failed.
that was
But I
this
mean,
morning.
talk about how dangerous that would have been. Obviously, an expert said this is a perfect way for Putin to basically breathe the fear of God into all his enemies, so they know they can't even escape Russia if one of his guys is at the head of Interpol.
Well, what that would really do, because the person who's in charge of Interpol is not actually in charge. Okay, there's three different layers. There's a leadership layer, there's an administrative layer, and right now there's a German who is the actual manager of Interpol, who deals with the law enforcement officers. If you don't know, Interpol's not a big police force. It is volunteer officers sent from law enforcement agencies all around the world to help manage these transnational issues, such as, cross-border money laundering and kidnapping and things like that. But with a Russian at the helm, in light of everything that they've done, it would essentially say, you know how Putin is. He would say, I own Interpol. And people would believe it, and no one would trust Interpol.
Yeah. Here is a light holiday reading suggestion from Malcolm Nance. He tweets, if you haven't read how Putin tries to end Western democracy, practically conquered European allies with fascist movements, and co-opted the U.S. alt-right, NRA, and evangelicals, and how he turned Trump into a winning asset of Russia, here's your Christmas wish, The Plot to Destroy Democracy by Malcolm Nance. Please, pick it up if you missed it for light beach reading this summer.
That sounded very much like we should have ended that. And a partridge in a pear tree.
Well, Steffi, the threat isn't over by a long shot.
I'll say.
We did manage to save democracy, but we've saved democracy for exactly 2 years. They are going to triple down their attacks on the fundamental precepts of democracy in the United States and abroad. And the plot to destroy democracy lays out precisely that plan and how they co-opted Trump, the alt-right, the NRA, the evangelicals. They all work for our adversaries. And all you have to do for evidence is look at Donald Trump yesterday about what he said with Khashoggi. He is working. It's time to use a word.
It was Helsinki. Adams. It was the Helsinki sequel, right? Him siding against American intelligence with a murderous dictator.
Yeah, but you can understand in Helsinki that he was in debt to Vladimir Putin. When he did this with the Saudis, it shows that he is a wholly owned subsidiary of third world dictators and autocrats, right? And now I said we can start using John Adams' favorite word about this, tyrant, because he has now chosen a tyrant-like activity to choose to ignore his entire government and their findings and to side with a murderous, brutal dictator. We are in serious trouble. And again, like I said, permission granted to anyone that wants to do this to an American citizen anywhere in the world.
You tweeted in 45 days, Dems will be able to subpoena them all. Hashtag good luck, Ivanka. What I said earlier, Malcolm, though, is those 45 days, this is the flush the weed down the toilet part.
Yeah.
Right? Because the police are knocking at the door. And this is terrifying. What Whitaker might be doing, do we find out in time before he tells Trump too much about what Mueller is doing? What do you think about that?
Well, I like the way Bob Mueller handled it by saying essentially, we're insulated from anything that you do, and we now know that there are many, many sealed indictments that are sitting in, the U.S. court in Northern Virginia. So he would have predicted all of this stuff. That's Bob Mueller is a brilliant man. For all that you say, I know some people out there say that they haven't seen the evidence of it. You're going to see the evidence of it, and even though we're at that point where, as you said a little earlier in the show, people are flushing, the weed down the toilet. You know what always happens when the cops raid the door? There's one person that's trying to open the door who doesn't want to get caught. There's another guy who puts his head under the pillow. There's a third guy who's hiding his guns in his meth. And then there's the guy who's flushing the weed down the toilet. As these guys go through their machinations to avoid all culpability, they are going to reveal everything. And we're going to see it by their actions. We're going to be the cop at the door going, man, they're a bunch of idiots.
Yeah. The Axios headline is Giuliani predicts Mueller won't subpoena Trump. I mean, we know he's submitted his written answers. What do you think?
Well, don't believe a word Giuliani says.
Right.
Giuliani, remember how the Mueller investigation was supposed to be finished by Labor Day, September 5th?
Yeah.
You guys remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's happening. Giuliani is projecting that he does not want there to be a subpoena. I firmly believe in my heart, and I've evidence-based that on Joyce Vance, the MSNBC former U.S. attorney, who said there's got to be a subpoena now. They said very clearly they would not answer those questions about anything that happened from the moment that he was elected to today.
Right.
And so they are going to go with their defiance role, and they're going to try to go down kicking and screaming. And, I'm going to make a couple of predictions here. Actually, there were some things I wanted to talk about. Number one, there will be an impeachment. There just has to be.
Yeah.
And there has to be because we cannot allow, and Nancy Pelosi did this with George W. Bush, right, when in his second term, where she said impeachment's off the table. We have to impeach to show that the guardrails of normalcy have to remain in place.
Yeah.
Even if you don't get a conviction, we've got to get this stuff out and onto the table. So I believe there will be an impeachment. The Democratic Party won't allow there to not be an impeachment within the next year. And a lot of people say, well, Trump would look forward to that because this is like Clinton. Everybody will rally around him. The country rallied around Clinton because they didn't see it.
Yeah.
They will.
It was an investigation of his private life, which shouldn't have happened in the first place. This is treason, Malcolm. I mean, as you've said.
Treason is item one on a maybe 100 different things. I mean, just the very fact that you said earlier about how he was, McGahn was essentially ordering McGahn to fulfill a campaign promise to investigate Comey, to investigate Clinton, using the Justice Department as a weapon system against his political opponent, that Nixon was impeached for the very same thing.
Yeah.
And it was, we see that in the Nixon roadmap that they've laid out right now. Trump is going down. There's probably 100 things we have no clue that he ordered, either through text or talking to McGahn, that he's going to get nailed on.
Malcolm, you obviously the latest. We now have a Nazi stack every morning, which is great. A mural at Duke University dedicated to victims of the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting was vandalized with a swastika Sunday night. You tweeted about the Vice story, which is neo-Nazis are organizing secretive paramilitary training across America. The creation of a new social networking platform called The Base appears to be an effort to shift Nazism from a divided digital space to physical, violent insurgency. A neo-Nazi who goes by the alias Norman Spear has launched a project to unify online fascists that link a vast coalition of individuals into a network training new soldiers for a so-called forthcoming race war. You've been warning about this for a long time.
All of that, most of those individuals are in plot to destroy democracy because the Russians did this first in Europe. They funded all of these Europe, what we would now call the alt-right pro-fascist youth groups, including Pegida in Germany, and they based them on the United Russia, that's Putin's political party, their little Hitler youth wing called the Nazi. And I wrote in the chapter called Hail Hydra about Anders Behring Breivik, the Norwegian guy who shot dead 69 children because he wanted to, quote unquote, eliminate the next generation of liberal politicians in Norway. They are legion. And the American alt-right is the newest iteration of them. And every alt-right leader and neo-Nazi leader in the United States has close ties to Moscow. David Duke has an apartment in Moscow. Richard Spencer, the Nazi leader, uses his apartment in Moscow.
Yeah.
This is a dangerous trend that everyone should pay attention to.
And I've said the media, I'm sorry, is being too timid about Trump's direct role in this. That the synagogue shooter's direct motive was Jews are funding the caravan, or funding, terrorists in the caravan, which is something the president of the United States said. That George Soros is funding the caravan. I mean, as I said earlier, the open of the show, Malcolm, don't warn of fascism. We're in it. We're soaking in it. Don't warn of a constitutional crisis. We're in it, right? I mean,
that's right. And we just won this election, but everyone has to understand that was step one. Now we've got 2 years to completely mobilize ourselves again in order to now take back the Senate, to take back the presidency, and more importantly, to stop the usurpation and the destruction of our norms, which is leading to the rise of open Nazis, armed militiamen in this country.
Yep.
And we have to beware. This thing could flare up into gunfire any
Malcolm,
time.
I got to read this one more time. I just showed Barbara and Dana Goldberg here, the thing that I sent you from my dad's obituary in 1983 in the New York Times, who, he was a prosecutor at Nuremberg. The experience left a deep impression on him. Unlike many conservatives, he tended after the war to refer to Nazism, not communism, as a symbol of ultimate evil. You've been a lifelong Republican. We keep saying, are Republicans at some point going to reclaim their party and so that we can reclaim our country?
Let me tell you, I left the Republican Party during the Clinton impeachment when I suddenly realized that it was win at all costs, destroy utterly your enemies. I'm not like that, right? National security guy, socially liberal. Your dad right now would be a flaming liberal. He's a Lincoln Republican, right? They wouldn't even allow, he's like Michael Steele. He's not allowed in any of the reindeer games because of his position. That party is done. What you have now is the Trump party, and it is the party of bigot and hatred and Nazis.
Yep. As I emailed to you, my dad was a patriot like you. So thankful for you. Not just Thanksgiving week, but always. Thanks for your love of country and wow. Let's God bless us, everyone. Right? Let's hope we get through this next month without.
I'm heading to Canada for Thanksgiving. I'm coming back now.
Oh, I thought you meant permanently. I was like, oh God, when he gives up the ship, we're done. Okay.
I was going to give him some money to start a savings account for me, so I wasn't opposed to it.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving, Malcolm. See you next week, honey.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All right. There he goes. Malcolm Nance.